Welcome back. Thank you for listening. I wanted to keep talking a little bit about culture and something that has been in my mind that unfortunately I think a lot of people in our office right now take for granted, but it is probably the first or second thing that I talk about when people ask me. People come and visit and they talk about the energy and it's very surface level. And what they really want to ask is, how was this culture created and what are some tools you use to create a culture that can create the energy that now people see at the surface level, if that makes sense. And for the last few years, I've been able to be a little more disengaged, and careful with that word, but disengaged meaning I've been able to run my business the same way, work probably the same or more hours inside of the office, but have been able to be more on the sidelines with my team than I have been on maybe 3 years ago when we were first starting to explode, because there is a factor that helps people move up in the leadership chain, and it's really the culture. And of course, at the beginning, we talked a little bit about this in a few other recordings, is creating that culture. It was like a lot of pain for a few months. But after the pain was done, when I talk about pain, just a funny story, I remember there's an IHOP here that you can walk to, and I remember like meeting people for an optional meeting at 7 in the morning, and people would come, and I would hate these people so much. Hate is such a strong word, but I would hate being around them so much because they were just the wrong people, and I would end up at IHOP by myself eating 12,000 calories alone. It was very sad. And now I look back, I'm like, you know what? That was part of the pain of learning to create a culture. Because culture is composed of people. Once the people are in the right place, which are only going to, if you attract them and you magnetize those people based on who you are, your character, your ambition level, then really it's, what do you set around yourself? How do you create an environment that leads to the result? And then you do the math backwards. We did another recording about doing the math backwards. So if I want a culture that people walk in and they feel pulled to work more, they feel empowered to work more, I'm going to empower and encourage different things. And that's how you set up a culture. You got to do some thinking. And now I look back and I realize, you know what? Every single morning we have an optional leaders meeting. Our office, like the work here does not start for a regular person in sales or management training. People do not have to be here, and they are totally good to come here at 9:45. That is the time everybody starts. Now we do have an optional leaders meeting that starts at 8 a.m. And it is 100% optional, and it's not a tricky word. If people do not show up, they don't need to let me know. They don't need to let any of the management people know. They just don't show up. It's completely optional, and there's absolutely no punishment verbally or sarcastic remarks if people are not in a leaders meeting. But we do encourage heavily for people to go, and we try to bring value to that meeting so that people are supposed to go. So now, for example, a big negative in sales is people say like, hey, we work a lot, work-life balance, blah, blah, blah. Now, if I put an optional meeting at 8 in the morning and you decide to go, you are going from working a lot because the company is making you work like crazy to now you're volunteering to work. And even if your parents ask you, one of the biggest reasons why people, when there's turnover in sales, is outside influences and negatives. And I immediately can change the culture in somebody's house. If a parent can ask somebody, well, why are you working so hard at that job? If you're attending this optional leaders meeting, the first thing you're going to say is like, I go at 8 because I want to. I don't have to be there at 8. And it's true. And it helps create. Now you're automatically onboarded into the job willingly versus, man, this job is making me work so much. So I wanted to talk about that because I think, hey, if you're trying to build a culture, you cannot skip the part where you're engaged and personally grow yourself to attract the people. Now, after that, if you do have a good group of people, you don't need many, maybe 4 or 5 people around you. If you do have a good group of people, hey, what things inside of the environment can I create that can pull people versus me pushing people? So pushing is a lot harder. If you had to push people to sell, or if you have to push people to do better, perform at a higher level, those conversations are a lot more draining and a lot harder than if you have an environment that pulls people. For example, I can create like somebody, like we'll create something to where it's like, hey, we're going to Six Flags on July 30th if you're promoted to a leadership role. And so perfect. So now instead of me, now somebody goes into their day, they don't really sell a lot. And instead of me pushing them to sell, there's a picture of Six Flags and I'm like, hey, don't you want to go? Based on how you did yesterday, it doesn't look like you want to go. Now I'm using Six Flags to pull that individual versus me getting behind them and pushing them. Hey, why didn't you sell enough yesterday? And I think that scaled at a massive level is extremely important to create a culture. And I would, invite you to, what optional things do you create that are genuinely optional? It's literally the first thing people think when I say we have an optional meeting at 8 in the morning. People are like, yeah, it's optional. I'm like, no, it's actually optional. And we do encourage people a lot to go. And we create a lot of the learning, a lot of the interviewing training, a lot of the extra growth that you can access happens before 8 or at 8 in the morning. So we promote the fact that, hey, if somebody comes at 8, you're going to grow faster. If you're one of those people that wants to grow faster, we super encourage you to go to the leaders meeting. You don't have to go. That would be you volunteering to work 13 hours a day. That's crazy. I'm almost the person against working so much, but I am creating an optional environment. And I think that is what shifts the attitude of the people. It's like, imagine showing up to a place where everybody wants to go. Think about the attitude when you walk into Six Flags and you can feel people are happy to be there. No one's forced, unless you talk to the employees that are there that have to be there to get paid. But then think about walking into like the DMV to renew your car sticker. Like everybody has to be there. It's never convenient. It sucks. And you walk into the room and you got to take this little paper and sit down on a chair and just wait like until they just decide to call you. And there's always a delay and it's never fun. I think now you can do it online, so it's easier. But you get the point. It's when a place is optional to go, then the people in it are willingly there, which makes the attitude so much better. When the place that you're in is only a work schedule or you have to be here to get paid or you have to come here or you have to, now the attitude could be good, but it's not guaranteed to be good. And that definitely affects performance. And in the world of sales, at least indirect selling or door-to-door, which is what I'm in, attitude is 90% of the day. Like if somebody goes into the field, if somebody goes to do sales with the worst pitch, but they have the attitude of like, that child, that 11-year-old kid that just wants to sell cookies at the door because that's what gets them, to their trip at the end of the school year, they're going to do better than the person inside of the office with the most training, with the most sales, that's burnt out, like is not prepared, is not happy to be there, and is dragging their body through the field. Everybody knows that. So therefore, it is a tactic to generate higher sales. How many environments do I create that create a pulling mindset, that create a pulling feeling versus how much do I wouldn't know how to run a business right now unless I have an optional meeting, because I want to work with the people that attend the optional stuff because those are the people that are willing to go home and do extra work. They're willing to go home and read. They're willing to use their own time to progress. And I think that's extremely powerful because that's where you tap into discretionary effort and you're going to grow faster if you work with people that are continuing to study, continuing to work, continuing to think about work after the work is done, after the schedule is done. And that's going to make your life a lot easier as a leader, as a manager, as an owner, or whatever it is that you're doing. So again, try to create an optional environment. Try to think about some areas in your life, work, etc., that you can create optional environments so you can access and enjoy the willing attitude of the people in it. And you will see progress. Of course, it's not a one-time or one-week thing. You have to continuously do it and repeat it over and over, but you will see results. It's 100% guaranteed that you will see a better progress in your people. So hopefully that helps, and see you at the next one.